Oh, guys, I sort of got two shows in one tonight. I'm going to mush them both together. One's about the Fed and uh, how public opinion is turning on the Fed and just what might happen. I mean, the Fed could actually be dismantled. And at that point, the Treasury might actually have to come in to rescue after the crisis. And the other story is, I was thinking, that before I heard this news on here, I was thinking, hey, we might have a Black Monday. That's what I was thinking, but I was giving it about a 20% chance of having a Black Monday. Now I'm upping it to 40%. Listen, guys, stay tuned for both shows in one show. I'm going to mush them both together. Stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome to part one. Now, here's the thing. We got problems with the markets, possibly tomorrow. It might be a big plunge in the markets. It could be. And the reason why is something that's going on in Saudi Arabia. Let's start the charts right here, and let's take a look. Saudi Arabia vows to retaliate against any sanctions. The Saudis have warned over threats over missing journalists as stock market plunges. What it is we've got a picture here of Rubio, and he says if Trump won't act, Congress will. That's what he says. And also, Trump has said, right here, it says Trump vows very powerful punishment if Saudi Arabia killed Jamal Khashoggi, I think. That's on NBC Nightly News tonight. And so there's a problem here. The Saudis and America have always been buddy-buddy. For years now, they've been buddy-buddy, going all the way back to when Kissinger signed a deal with them. I think it was, remember right, I think it was 1971, around in there. That's a long time. We sucked an awful lot of oil out of there. It's come over here to America. And the thing is the Saudis originally started with like 196 billion barrels. That's what they had, like back in the 1950s or whatever. And reportedly, they say they still got 196 billion barrels. But I mean, that's like a fat kid sucking on a strawberry milkshake, and he sucks on it for a half an hour, and he still says it's a full milkshake. Not, So Saudi Arabia, they're not letting anybody in. I've heard rumors that they're pumping seawater down into their wells in order to increase the pressure of what they're sucking up left, And so America's been allied with Saudi Arabia, and this is what's built the foundations of the petrodollar. Well, the petrodollar's been being eroded. For a long period of time now, the petrodollar's being eroded. If this situation were to come to fore, oil prices probably could go up a lot from where they are now. Not only oil prices go up an awful lot, this would really help support the weakening of the dollar. Tariffs on China have really weakened the dollar. This allows the Fed to continue with their tightening process unencumbered if the dollar goes up. If the dollar goes down. If the dollar gets weaker and we have things that come in that happen in the world that weaken the dollar, like oil prices shooting skyward, helps to weaken the dollar. What actually happens in the end is this allows the Federal Reserve to continue with their quantitative tightening much deeper. It means interest rates can go up a lot higher without the dollar deflating. See, I'm going to tell you, we've been walking a tightrope basically since 2008 until now. The Fed's been walking a tightrope with deflation on one side of the tightrope and inflation on the other side. And I'll tell you about the Fed. They can control deflation. They can't control hyperinflation. Because if they try to pour more money on it, you have to understand how the Fed works. They work with money creation. And so if they create a lot of money, they can control deflation. Ben Bernanke put it the best. This is why he got called Helicopter Ben. He said, if we have to, and that's back when he was chairman of the Fed, he said, if we have to, we will dump money out of helicopters to stop deflation. So they can control deflation. Deflation deflation can run away real fast, like in 2008 when we had the crisis of 2008. We had a sudden shock of deflation, but that's as far as it's going to get, because they're going to come in with fire hoses full of money and they're going to put it out. It's just like the firemen, you know, they can always put out a fire by using water. Well, the Fed can always use money to put out a deflation. But what do they do when they get a hyperinflation? If they use the same tool, and remember, that's the only tool they have. If they pour that tool on a hyperinflation, well, it just explodes. It's like a grease fire. Never put by the way, there's something I want to say. If you get a grease fire in your kitchen, never pour water on it. Pour baking soda on it. That's what you do. It'll explode on you if you pour water on it. And that's what's going to happen if we get a hyperinflation and they try to pour money on it, liquidity on it. They're going to explode the hyperinflation. Just makes it worse. So what tool do they have to slow hyperinflation down? Well, they don't have any. Ultimately, the only tool they have with a hyperinflation is to do some form of a reset, where they nullify the currency completely. And this basically what they do is just say, well, it's over. The currency's worthless, it's over, and then they bring in a new currency. That's what they do in a hyperinflation. That's the only tool that they actually have. So anyway, this is an explosive situation happening tonight. The Saudis are warning against threats over missing journalists as stock market plunges. Saudis are lashing out at critics as pressure mounts over the disappearance of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. I think it's Khashoggi. He's missing. What happened to him? Well, we don't know. Because he's missing. The obvious answer is we don't know. And so this is an explosive situation tonight. We're going to have to wait and see what happens tomorrow morning. But I'm going to tell you something. I was half expecting a plunge in the stock market on Monday anyway. So we get this to top it off, and the markets are nervous and jittery right now. We could get a massive plunge on Monday in the stock market. Okay, listen, guys. Stay tuned for part 2 coming right up. Good day, guys. And listen, I got to explore another alternative possibility that's arisen. You know, the Federal Reserve is, in fact, not just for the last little while, but for the last while, people have been getting on to them. They realize that they're not part of the federal government, that they're as federal as Federal Express. Sentiment about the Federal Reserve is probably at an all-time low. The people of America. To say they're not crazy about the Fed right now is an understatement. Now, we got a huge crisis coming down the pike. It's coming down the pike fast, heading right for us. The president has already said that the Fed, he's already implicated the Fed in causing this crisis that's coming. And he's right. The president's right. So, in a way, the president has already spoke against the Fed, and the people's sentiment is already bad against the Fed. Now, in my scenarios that I was talking about, what's probably going to happen to solve this crisis, the Fed would probably convene in meetings and stuff. We have to explore another possibility, that because of this crisis might be actually blamed on the Fed by the people of America when this crisis occurs. And this crisis is going to be something worse than we have ever experienced before. Now, in the 2008 crisis, everyone looked to the Fed to solve the crisis. But what if, I've heard so many people saying abolish the Fed. What if during a crisis the people actually turn on the Federal Reserve and blame them for the crisis? And the Federal Reserve gets all the blame for having caused the crisis. And the people very quickly could actually quite literally abolish the Fed. Well, let's turn on the charts right here and explore another possibility here. We're going to take a look at what was called the $1 trillion coin. It was a concept that emerged during the United States debt crisis in 2008. I mean, in 2011, just after the 2008 crisis. And they proposed to create a $1 trillion coin. They are allowed to mint platinum coins in any denomination that they please. Now, if we move down here and take a look at something real quick, any other coins, even gold coins, right here, it says, whereas coins in any other specified metals are restricted to amounts of $50, $25, $10, and $5. So they can't go over $50 on a gold coin, which is, I think this law was set in place back when gold was an awful lot cheaper. But at any rate, they can't go over $50 on any other coin except for platinum. With platinum bullion coins, they can be minted in any denomination. So they can mint a $1 trillion coin. Now, what they were actually planning on doing was actually minting a $1 trillion coin back, and they were actually talking about doing this. It would have brought on a hyperinflation if they had done it back in 2011. But to solve the debt crisis in 2011, they proposed a way to bypass any necessity for the United States Congress to raise the country's borrowing limit through the minting of a very high-valued platinum coin, or coins. The concept gained more mainstream attention by late 2012 during the debates over the United States fiscal cliff, negotiations, and renewed debt ceiling discussions. After reaching the headlines during the week of January 7, 2013, use of the $1 trillion concept was ultimately rejected by, now who was it rejected by? The Federal Reserve. It says, and the Treasury. But the Federal Reserve rejected, says rejected by the Federal Reserve. Well, here's the thing, and here's the possibility we're exploring, is what if they abolish the Federal Reserve after the next debt crisis? Because the Federal Reserve could take all of the blame for this, and the American people could be absolutely up in arms by the time this next debt crisis is over. If half of them lose their jobs, if banks go down and they lose their money and they can't access their money, if stores go empty and there's civil unrest in the whole country and martial law has to be declared, and the emergency acts have to be put in place by the president, has to sign emergency acts and everything else, and all of the blame goes on the Federal Reserve. People don't like the Federal Reserve right now. You know? So, if the Federal Reserve, who rejected this the last time, it was ultimately rejected by the Federal Reserve, is gone, the Treasury might go ahead and approve it. And they have the ability to mint any denomination in these platinum coins that they want. And as many of them as they want. Platinum bullion coins by this statute may be minted in any denomination, it says right here. And so they can mint as many of them as they want, but this would bring on ultimately a hyperinflation. Definitely bring on a hyperinflation. So what I wanted to do was I just wanted to explore this possibility that that I've never seen. It seems like recently the Fed has been getting more and more bad press as they've been pulling this stunt. I'm going to call it a stunt, what they're doing right now with quantitative tightening. But all of the other central banks are following suit because they have to follow suit. Because when you get the U.S. Treasury bonds yields rising, it makes it much more attractive for investors. These other countries, they have to follow suit in order to stay viable in the marketplace. They have to raise their yields. And so we got the Federal Reserve raising rates and raising yields. And I mean, how far could this go? This ultimately is going to lead toward a crisis. And this crisis is coming an awful lot quicker. I'll tell you, there's an awful lot of these economists out there who are saying, okay, 2020, 2024. Some of the people out there are saying not going to come in our lifetimes. They're agreeing with Janet Yellen. You know, she said it's not going to come in our lifetime, which I think is totally ridiculous. You know, but my personal opinion is coming a lot sooner than people think. It's probably coming within the next few months. It's already actually the system is starting to unravel as we speak. And as the system unravels, the blame is falling on the Federal Reserve. You get a massive movement in the people, and basically, it's been the rule, not the exception, but the rule through history. When you get the massive people and they want something done, it gets done. You know, and when you get the massive people behind it, I remember in Cyprus, the banks planned on doing a haircut to all of the people in Cyprus, and the people all unanimously said no. Well, guess what? The bankers, they backed off. Then they said, okay, we're only going to give a haircut to the people who have more than 100,000 euros. Because the masses of the people, most of them didn't have 100,000 euros. But they knew that they were not going to let the banks give them a haircut. And they all said no simultaneously, and the banks backed off. And this is the way it is. You know? The people actually have the power it's just that the governments, they do what they want to do because the people never complain. They say to themselves, okay, we can put in any law we want. As long as the people don't complain, as long as the people take it, you know? And so in this case, what I notice is massive appeal, the mass of the public, not a mass appeal, but the masses of the public are starting to actually loathe the Federal Reserve. And this is what I'm noticing. This is a trend, and that's what I forecast on here is trends. And that's a trend I see developing, and I see it getting worse very rapidly. People are gaining knowledge, and they're getting to know just exactly what the Federal Reserve actually is. It's a privately owned institution. See, when I was growing up, when I was younger, I always used to think that the Federal Reserve the Federal Reserve Bank was part of the government. I always thought it was part of the government. So this is a possibility. These coins that they could switch over into these coins so quick. Once the Federal Reserve's out of the way, the Treasury could print these coins in platinum, and they could create as much money as they want or need to cover the entire situation, to stop the crisis. I mean, if they're stamping out these trillion-dollar coins, they could create 100,000 of them through the mint. And they don't have to give them to the public. They can use them to bail out institutions. Whatever. The coins would be they would be counted as if a banking system was failing, they could give the bank a $1 trillion coin, and the bank then would have sufficient capital forever, practically. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble a little bit. Listen, thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys are having a great Sunday. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I'll be back tomorrow morning with the market reports. That's if it's not another holiday. I don't think it is. Oftentimes they have holidays on Mondays. Anyway, we'll catch you guys tomorrow morning. Bye bye for now, guys, and have a great finish to your weekend.